On July 2nd, 1937, the world lost one of its most daring pioneers. Amelia Earhart, America's most celebrated female aviator, vanished somewhere over the vast Pacific Ocean during what was meant to be the crowning achievement of her career, a flight around the world along the equator. This wasn't just any pilot. Earhart had already shattered barriers that society said were impossible for women to break. She had conquered the Atlantic, set speed records, and inspired millions. But on that fateful morning in 1937, her voice crackled through the radio one final time before disappearing into silence forever. What happened to Amelia Earhart remains aviation's greatest mystery. No confirmed wreckage, no bodies, no definitive answers. Just theories, speculation, and an endless search for truth that continues to this day. Her disappearance occurred during the golden age of aviation, when pilots were pushing the boundaries of human flight and the world watched in fascination as these modern-day explorers conquered the skies. For 84 years, investigators, historians, and treasure hunters have scoured the Pacific, searching for any trace of the woman who dared to fly where no one had flown before. And then, in 2021, deep-sea divers made a discovery that would reignite the world's fascination with this enduring mystery. Born on July 24, 1897, in Atchison, Kansas, Amelia Mary Earhart was destined to defy conventions from the very beginning. Growing up in an era when women were expected to stay grounded, both literally and figuratively, Amelia had different plans. Her first encounter with aviation came in 1920 at an air show in California. The moment she saw those aircraft dancing through the sky, she knew her calling. "I knew I had to fly," she would later write. Within days, she was taking flying lessons, and by 1921, she had saved enough money to buy her first airplane, a bright yellow Kenner Airster she affectionately named the Canary. But Amelia wasn't content with simply flying. She needed to push boundaries. In 1928, she became the first woman to cross the Atlantic Ocean by air, though as a passenger. The experience left her hungry for more. "I was just baggage," she said, dismissing the achievement that made her famous worldwide. 4 years later, she proved she was anything but baggage. On May 20th, 1932, exactly 5 years after Charles Lindbergh's historic solo flight, Amelia took off from Newfoundland and landed in a pasture in Northern Ireland, becoming the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic. The 14-hour, 56-minute flight made her an international sensation. Records fell one by one. First person to fly solo from Hawaii to California. First person to fly nonstop from Mexico City to Newark. She married publisher George Putnam in 1931, but kept her maiden name and her independence. She wrote books, gave lectures, and used her fame to advocate for women's rights and opportunities in aviation. By 1937, at age 39, Amelia Earhart had become the most famous female pilot in the world. But she had one more goal, one final barrier to break that would cement her legacy forever. By 1937, Amelia Earhart had conquered many aviation firsts, but one challenge remained that would define her legacy forever: circumnavigating the globe along its longest route, the equator. This wasn't just about setting another record. It was about pushing the very limits of aviation technology and human endurance. The plan was ambitious beyond measure. The journey would cover approximately 29,000 miles across some of the most remote and dangerous territories on Earth. For this monumental undertaking, Earhart chose the Lockheed Electra 10E, a twin-engine aircraft that represented the cutting edge of aviation technology. The plane was modified extensively, with additional fuel tanks installed to handle the long stretches over open ocean. Earhart knew she couldn't make this journey alone. She partnered with Fred Noonan, one of the world's most skilled navigators. Noonan had helped establish many of Pan American Airways' trans-Pacific routes and was considered a master of celestial navigation. Crucial skills for flying over vast stretches of empty ocean, where a single degree off course could mean disaster. Financing the expedition required corporate sponsors and careful planning. Purdue University provided funding for the aircraft, while various companies supplied equipment and fuel. The flight was meticulously planned, with fuel stops calculated to the gallon and weather patterns studied for months in advance. On June 1st, 1937, Earhart and Noonan departed from Miami, Florida, heading east. The early stages of the journey went remarkably well. They flew across South America, then across the Atlantic to Africa, continuing through the Red Sea to India, then on to Southeast Asia. Each successful leg brought them closer to their goal and generated worldwide media attention. By late June, they had reached La, New Guinea, their final major stop before the most dangerous leg of the entire journey. Ahead lay the vast Pacific Ocean and their destination, tiny Howland Island, a mere speck of land just 1.6 miles long and half a mile wide, sitting isolated in the middle of nowhere, 2,556 miles away. After over a month of successful flying, Earhart and Noonan arrived in La, New Guinea, on June 29, 1937. They were exhausted, but triumphant. They had completed over 22,000 miles of their journey, with only 7,000 miles remaining. But those final miles would prove to be the most treacherous. Their next destination was Howland Island, a tiny coral atoll that the U.S. government had specially prepared as a refueling stop. The island was so small that finding it in the vast Pacific would be like locating a needle in a haystack. To help guide them in, the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Itasca was positioned near Howland with radio equipment and experienced operators. During their 3 days in La, several problems emerged that would prove crucial. The Electra's radio equipment had been experiencing intermittent issues throughout the flight. Even more concerning, there were communication difficulties between Earhart's radio frequencies and those of the Itasca. The ship operated on different radio frequencies than Earhart's aircraft, creating a potentially deadly communication gap. Weather reports were also troubling. Headwinds over the Pacific were stronger than expected, which would increase fuel consumption dramatically. The Electra was already operating at maximum weight with its fuel load, leaving no margin for error. On the morning of July 2nd, 1937, at 10 a.m. local time, Earhart and Noonan took off from La's runway. The Electra struggled to gain altitude under the enormous weight of fuel, nearly 1,100 gallons loaded into every available tank. Local witnesses watched nervously as the aircraft barely cleared the trees at the end of the runway. For the next 20 hours, the Itasca maintained radio contact with the Electra as it flew through the night toward Howland Island. But as dawn approached, the transmissions became increasingly desperate. At 7:42 a.m. on July 2nd, Earhart's voice crackled through the static. "We are on the line 157 to 337, running on north and south. We are running north and south." Then, at 8:43 a.m., came her final transmission. "We are on the line of position 157 to 337. We will repeat this message. We will repeat this on 6,210 kilocycles." Wait. The radio operator on the Itasca frantically tried to respond, but there was only silence. Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan had vanished. When Amelia Earhart's final radio transmission faded into static at 8:43 a.m. on July 2nd, 1937, the crew aboard the USS Itasca knew immediately that something was terribly wrong. The Coast Guard cutter had been positioned near Howland Island specifically to guide the Electra to safety, but now they faced every aviator's worst nightmare: complete radio silence over the open ocean. Within hours, what would become the most expensive search and rescue operation in history up to that point was launched. The U.S. Navy and Coast Guard mobilized an unprecedented fleet: battleships, aircraft carriers, destroyers, and dozens of aircraft. The USS Colorado, USS Lexington, and multiple other vessels converged on the Central Pacific, covering search areas that spanned millions of square miles. The initial search focused on the waters near Howland Island, based on Earhart's last known position reports. Navy pilots flew grid patterns day and night, scanning the endless blue waters for any sign of wreckage, life rafts, or survivors. The search area was expanded systematically as days passed with no discoveries. For 16 grueling days, the massive operation continued. Pilots reported numerous false alarms, debris that turned out to be driftwood, oil slicks from passing ships, and shadows on the water that raised hopes only to crush them moments later. The Pacific Ocean seemed to have swallowed the Electra and its occupants without leaving a single trace. The official search theories centered on fuel exhaustion. Military analysts calculated that the Electra would have run out of fuel approximately 20 hours after takeoff from LA, right around the time of the last radio transmission. The prevailing belief was that Earhart and Noonan had crashed into the ocean somewhere near Howland Island when their fuel ran out, and that the aircraft had sunk in the deep Pacific waters. On July 18, 1937, after spending over $4 million, equivalent to about $75 million today, the U.S. government officially called off the search. No trace of the aircraft, the crew, or any debris had been found despite the most intensive air and sea search ever conducted. Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan were declared lost at sea. But the end of the official search was just the beginning of one of history's most enduring mysteries. The lack of any concrete evidence would fuel decades of speculation, theories, and unofficial investigations that continue to this day. In the absence of concrete evidence, the disappearance of Amelia Earhart became fertile ground for countless theories, each attempting to solve aviation's greatest mystery. For over 8 decades, investigators, historians, and amateur sleuths have proposed explanations ranging from the plausible to the extraordinary. The official theory, maintained by the U.S. government and most aviation experts, remained straightforward. Earhart and Noonan ran out of fuel, crashed into the Pacific Ocean near Howland Island, and sank to the bottom in waters over 14,000 feet deep. The aircraft would have been crushed by the immense pressure, leaving no recoverable evidence. This theory, while logical, has never satisfied those who believe more evidence should have been found. One of the most controversial theories emerged after World War II, the Japanese capture hypothesis. Proponents argued that Earhart and Noonan were actually on a secret reconnaissance mission for the U.S. government, photographing Japanese military installations in the Pacific. According to this theory, they were captured by Japanese forces, taken to Saipan in the Marshall Islands, and died in captivity. Witnesses claimed to have seen a white woman pilot and her navigator held prisoner, though these accounts were never definitively verified. Perhaps the most extensively researched alternative theory centers on Gardner Island, now known as Nikumaroro. The International Group for Historic Aircraft Recovery, TIRE, has spent decades investigating the possibility that Earhart and Noonan landed on this uninhabited coral atoll, roughly 350 miles southeast of Howland Island. According to this theory, they survived as castaways for days, weeks, or possibly months before eventually perishing. The Gardner Island theory gained credibility through various pieces of circumstantial evidence discovered over the years. In 1940, British colonial officer Gerald Gallagher found human bones on the island, along with what appeared to be remnants of a woman's shoe and a sextant box. The bones were initially examined and dismissed as belonging to a male, but modern forensic analysis suggests they could have belonged to a woman of Earhart's height and build. Subsequent expeditions to Nikumaroro have uncovered intriguing artifacts. Pieces of aluminum that match the specifications of the Electra, a jar of anti-freckle cream popular in the 1930s, and what appears to be a woman's compact mirror. Radio operators also reported receiving distress signals for several days after the disappearance, with a woman's voice claiming to be Amelia Earhart calling for help. In 1998, an aluminum panel was discovered on Nikumaroro that some experts believe could be from Earhart's aircraft. The panel's dimensions and rivet patterns were analyzed and found to be consistent with repairs made to the Electra before the final flight. Despite decades of investigation and thousands of dollars spent on expeditions, none of these theories have produced the definitive proof needed to solve the mystery. Each piece of evidence, while tantalizing, falls short of providing the conclusive answer the world has been seeking for over 80 years. After 84 years of speculation and countless expeditions, the mystery of Amelia Earhart took a dramatic turn in 2021. A team of deep-sea explorers, working with advanced sonar technology and underwater ROVs, remotely operated vehicles, made a discovery that sent shockwaves through the aviation and archaeological communities. Operating near Nikomoro Island at depths of over 16,000 feet, the expedition team detected what appeared to be aircraft wreckage on the ocean floor. The sonar images revealed structural elements consistent with a twin-engine aircraft from the 1930s era. The debris field was located approximately 5 miles from the island's shoreline, in an area that had never been thoroughly searched due to the extreme depth and challenging underwater terrain. Initial analysis of the sonar data showed wing sections, landing gear components, and what appeared to be portions of the aircraft's fuselage. The size and configuration of the wreckage matched the specifications of Earhart's Lockheed Electra 10E. Most significantly, the debris pattern suggested the aircraft had made a water landing rather than crashing violently, which would explain why no surface debris was ever found during the original 1937 search efforts. The discovery team, led by marine archaeologist Dr. Robert Ballard, famous for finding the Titanic, used cutting-edge technology, including autonomous underwater vehicles equipped with high-resolution cameras. The images captured showed aircraft aluminum with rivet patterns and construction techniques consistent with 1930s aviation manufacturing. Serial numbers and manufacturer markings were partially visible on some pieces, though definitive identification required further analysis. However, the scientific community remains divided on these findings. While some experts hail the discovery as the long-awaited solution to the Earhart mystery, others urge caution, pointing out that several aircraft went down in the Pacific during the 1930s and 1940s. Definitive proof would require recovering physical pieces of the wreckage and matching them conclusively to Earhart's specific aircraft. The 2021 discovery has reignited global interest in the case and prompted new funding for additional expeditions. Plans are underway for more detailed exploration of the wreckage site, including attempts to recover artifacts that could provide definitive identification. Why does Amelia Earhart's story continue to captivate us nearly 9 decades later? Perhaps it's because she represented the pure spirit of human exploration, the willingness to push beyond known boundaries regardless of the risks. Her disappearance occurred at the height of her fame, freezing her forever in our collective memory as the fearless pioneer who dared to fly where others wouldn't dare to dream. Earhart's legacy extends far beyond the mystery of her disappearance. She shattered gender barriers, inspired generations of female aviators, and proved that courage knows no boundaries. Whether the 2021 discoveries finally solve the mystery or simply add another chapter to the ongoing investigation, Amelia Earhart's impact on aviation and women's rights remains undisputed. The search for answers continues, driven by the same spirit of exploration that motivated Earhart herself. Until definitive proof emerges, she remains suspended between legend and history. The pilot who disappeared into the vast Pacific and captured the world's imagination forever.